able to make it to the class. Okay, first of all, I want to appreciate you for being in the class today, and we're going to be talking lots of things as regards project risk management, and I need you to pay attention. In a place where you have some questions, you can kindly drop it in the chat box, so I would come back to respond to your questions. Okay, it's going to be a wonderful time with me once again. My name is Timex Pekene, your #1 solutions architect. And today I want us to talk about project risk management, which is very important to our career. As project managers, we face challenges, different kinds of challenges. And it's also good we have understanding of these challenges we may face in the future by analyzing the road or the parts of our project to identify them beforehand. So one thing we do is to come up with the management plan that will enable us carry out project risk activities on our project. So what is project risk management? It includes the process of conducting risk management, the planning aspect of it, the identification, the analysis, and also the response planning and implementing those response strategies. And once those response strategies have been implemented, we still have to monitor and control them, ensuring that we are capturing them in time. So this is all about the project risk management. There are terms that I would want us to be familiar with as we move on. The first thing is negative risk. You know, when we talk about risk, people would feel risk is only a negative happenstance, but that's not true. That's not true. We have both negative and positive risk. Yeah, once I deploy the understanding of what the risk is all about, you can know that, yeah, there may be positive risk. That is like unplanned events, the possibility of unplanned events invading our project, whether good or bad. The good ones are positive, unplanned event. The bad ones that will take money out of our pockets are negative, unplanned events. So these are negative risks. So negative risk has to do with the understanding of potential problems that might occur in the project and how they might impede the project's success. And this is what some persons would call threats. Yeah. But opportunities are also unplanned events. And these are what we call the positive risk. These are risks that can result to positive consequences. So there are also known risks and unknown risks. Those risks that can be identified beforehand are known risks. We can proactively manage them. And that is where we assign contingencies to. All our contingencies reserve are assigned to this known risk. But your known risk cannot be managed proactively. And that is where the senior management would want to assign the management reserve. That is for the unknown. There are factors that can influence the attitude of our organization or maybe our stakeholders towards risk, which includes 1, the risk appetite, 2, their risk tolerance and their risk threshold. The risk appetite is their willingness to want to accept risk. We'll talk about tolerance. Would they even allow it? How far? Would They want to talk about it. If there is a certain percentage of risk, even mixed with some opportunity, would they still want to make investment into the project? Then the risk threshold, in fact, looking at when they accepted risk or the rejected risk, how much are they willing to accept? What is a no-no to them? Then we have others that we must analyze on our project. One is the business risk. Looking at the business objectives that was identified before the project was consummated. What may likely stop it? Are there unplanned happenings that we can envisage that may impede us from realizing those objectives? Are there unplanned happenings that we can, speculate that can help us realize them even better with low costs, with minimal resources? Talking about personal material and equipment. Then we have pure risk. We have the residual risk and the secondary risk. So in this term, pure risk are just those risks that actually can be categorized, well identified as the main risk that we must go for. Then we have the residual risk, then the secondary risk. When we carry out risk activities on the project, maybe you could have identified some risk right from the onset, and we come up with response strategy in trying to implement those response strategy. We may achieve them all, but there may be some other risks we cannot eliminate. They will just be there. And those ones, we will come to live with them by accepting them. We may only come up with some mitigative strategy to want to mitigate them if they occur. While the secondary risks are different. Secondary risks are those risks when we implement risk response strategy, they occur by trying to ensure that we respond to the identified risk. We ended up creating more risk, and these are the secondary risks. Yeah. Risk can actually turn some stakeholders off, or maybe on. It depends on if they are risk averse or risk seekers or risk neutral. And that is what is called the risk tolerance. If they have a high tolerance of risk, if they are risk seeking, if they have a very low tolerance of risk, it turns them off. They are risk averse. There are investors that are like that. It doesn't matter what the percentage may be, even 0.05% of risk can turn them off. So why the risk neutral? They are just between the risk averse and the risk seekers, in between. They are not chasing risk, but at the same time, they are not running away from risk. They are not running away from risk. So that's it. Let's take a look at these diagrams. And you see the risk averse, which is here. And taking a look at the horizontal and the vertical, looking at the utility, you see how the curve is. Why is the risk neutral? You see, it's just a straight line. The risk averse has a trajectory look from the beginning of the project. They take their time to want to start rejecting the risk because they really do not want any investment that may not give them maybe 75, 85, 95% of a return within time by the risk seekers. The potential payoff increases while the utility stays low. They want to ensure that everything that they do promises a high payback. Even with the least investment, they are still willing to move forward. So project risk management has some sub-processes we must talk about. The first one is for us to come up with to carry out rather the planned risk management, where which you have an output called the risk management plan. Then second, to identify the risk. And this is the process where which we will determine which risk may affect our project, and we will document them in the risk register. The risk register becomes the output. Then number two is to perform the qualitative risk analysis. In this area, we want to prioritize the risk for further analysis, the identified risk for further analysis by assessing them. When we assess them qualitatively, we want to combine their probability, that is their possibility of occurring, with the impact, if they may occur. What will be the impact? That is qualitative. That is a combination of two factors, probability times impact. Impact is like how much would they take out of our pocket if they may occur? How much would they bring into our pocket if they may occur? Yeah, and their likelihood of occurrence. That is to perform qualitative risk analysis. Having done that, we move on to the next phase, which is to perform the quantitative risk analysis. And in this process, we are numerically analyzing the effect of the identified risk on the overall project objective. You see the difference between the quantitative risk analysis and the qualitative risk analysis. The qualitative risk analysis, we are analyzing the possibility of occurring, the likelihood of occurrences of the identified risk found in the risk register and their impact if they may occur. We are not placing them to find how much would they remove from our pocket as regards the project. But when we move into the perform quantitative risk analysis, we want to rank the risk over the project objectives. And then you see some risk coming higher than some risk. Now you can now see that some risk may likely take 10% of your total investment if they may occur. Some risk may even bring 15% additional to your pocket or save you some cost if they may occur. These are positive risk. Yeah. So we identify these risks, analyze them qualitatively and quantitatively. So having identified, analyzed, what do? We must plan the risk responses. In this process, we will develop options and actions that would enhance these opportunities if they are really positive risk, and also actions and steps that will reduce the threats if they are negative risk. Talking about threats to the project objectives. That is the responses. What would we do? This is where I'm going to be demonstrating some knowledges to you as regards how to respond to risk. There's a terminology I have, which I call the CATM, We'll talk about that when we get there. So having come up with a plan risk response strategy, we would now start implementing them. This is where we have the implement risk response. Here now, we want to ensure that the agreed upon risk responses are executed as planned. We are addressing the overall project risk exposure, minimizing individual project threats, and maximizing the individual project opportunities. This is what we do. Haven't done this, haven't carried out these implementations. Would it not be wise we monitor the risk? If we are reducing the threat and increasing the opportunity. So when we monitor, we come up with process of implementing risk response plans, tracking identified risk, monitoring those residual risks I told you about, those residual risks that cannot be eliminated when risk response strategies have been implemented. And also here, we will identify new risk. What are those new risks? Those new risks may be the secondary risk. While you try to carry out risk response activity, you may create additional risk, or maybe you may identify some new risk. And evaluating risk processes, their effectiveness throughout the project. This is what we do, we monitor it. So this is just to set the table for us to move on. So we have seven sub-processes for us to talk about: plan risk management, identify risk, perform qualitative risk analysis, perform quantitative risk analysis, plan risk responses, and implement risk responses, and monitor those risks once implementations are done. In every business, you can do this. It doesn't matter if it is a financial, accountancy, problems, it does not matter. Follow this methodology, follow this process from cradle to cradle, and you will be able to keep negative risk away from your project and increase opportunities. It doesn't matter the area, whether it's an investment project, whether it is a construction project, you just name it. If it is even a political project, pharmaceutical project, these are the strategy to deploy. So just to remind ourselves, if we have to plan risk management, what do? We come up with a process of defining how to conduct the risk management activities for our project. So we will come up with explicit planning that will enable us reduce the possibility of negative risk occurring and increase the possibility of positive risk occurring. And this area is very important. Yeah. Because it brings in visibility. So what do we need? What do we need? If we have to come up with our project risk management plan, what do we need? We need to look for the project charter. Like, the project charter is that 1 to 3 page document that we formed at the onset of the project, which we had the sponsor signing off and the project manager identified and signing off. That document that has all the preliminaries of the baselines, the cost baseline, the schedule baseline, and all of the plans that we may have. The business case is found in there. And the options are found in there. So we bring that on board. We come up with policies and procedures that will enable us to realize those things in a better way. And then we move on to want to lay hands upon the project management plan. Now in the project management plan, we have the project charter developed with further detailings. We can see things better. We can understand strategy. We can actually look at cost, look at risk per se. The stakeholders are identified. The stakeholders' requirements are also collected herein. The quality that are needed are found in there. And everything about the project and all the subsidiary plans are found in the project management plan. So we want to analyze everything about it to identify what we should be doing and how we can get it done, who will be in charge, and how would the reporting as regards risk management be done. Yeah. So this is what we do. We bring them in, we look at all the project documents, we also consider the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. Then when we identify risk, people who have hands-on experience, somebody who had done that before can capture this risk, can come up with the planning and what should be allowed and what should not be allowed, who should do what better than someone who is just new to read. That's why we have the expert judgment as one of our tools and techniques. Then we just analyze data. All the data we gathered from the input, from the project charter, the project management plan, the project documents, from the enterprise environmental factors in our organizational process asset, we analyze them and we meet. We sit down to get this done. When we say meetings, it does not mean war room, it does not mean co-location. This may be virtual, but yet, that's what we do. Yeah. Then at the end of the day, everything found, every agreement entered, policies put together, procedures that we came up with would be put together as risk management plan. So this is the process of defining how to conduct risk management activities. How can we conduct risk management activities? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? How should we get it done? What are the policies and procedures? Who is in charge of what? So I haven't done this. Let's quickly move down to some new terminologies that I think we should be learning about. In the risk management plan, we may want to look at the risk methodology. We want to look at the roles and responsibilities. Like I said, who's going to do what? And then how much should be expended? How much should be assigned? How much resources should be assigned for risk management activities? What will be the timing? And what are the risk categories? We're talking about structure that will ensure a comprehensive process of systematically identify the risk to consistent level of detailing. This category may speculate the risk breakdown structure. When we say risk breakdown structure, we're talking about the hierarchical, organized depiction of the identified project risk arranged by their categories. If it is a construction project, we may want to talk about the foundational risk associated with the foundation block works to installation of roofs, maybe the electricals, maybe the installations of ACs and the piping systems. You see the categories. Yeah. So now we have the project risk management plan as our input, as our output of the plan risk management plan. What do? We carry these procedures, we carry these policies, we carry these rules into the next phase. Now we cannot sit down, observing those rules to identify the risk upon our project. And in this process, when we say identify risk, we want to determine which risk may affect the project and document them and their characteristics. And when we do this, we must encourage our project personnel to be part of it, or project personnel rather, to be part of this. It has beautiful benefits. Yeah. Because when you have team members participating in identifying risk, when it comes to when they would respond to it, they may not be new to them because they were part of the identification. This is what we do from cradle to cradle. That is to say, from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. Risk identification is not just only in the initiating phase. We do that as the project progresses till the end of the project life cycle. So you want to carry out project risk management. Sorry, you want to identify project risk. Where would you find those risks? What are the documents you need? You need a project management plan as your input. You're analyzing things in there. You're looking at all the project documents. Are they well articulated? Are there statements that are ambiguous that may take money out of a pocket if we are not careful? We're looking at all the agreements entered. Even contract may be wrongly entered if we are not careful. And at the end of the day, even when we are being violated by the other party, we may not claim for compensation. I remember something that happened several years back on my project. It's very funny, but I think this whole dog was brilliant, more brilliant than some of us, the engineers on that project. We had this company coming in to carry out some excavation. And in this excavation, they're going to be boring down to about 200 feet below the earth's surface. And for every perforation done, certain amount will be paid. But in the contract, it was stated that they are to pour in certain materials to cover up the holes. And then the contract went on. And at the end of it, they only carried little amount of the material systematically and fill up just the top of it. And as they were doing it, we stopped them. That is stated in the contract that you're supposed to take certain material and cover up the hole. And they say, yeah, that's what we're doing. And we did not tell them that the filling could have started from bottom to top. So they just sealed up the top. And they were right because they were smart. It could have cost them more materials to fill up the hole from bottom to the top. So as we initiated management of change, as we requested for a change, they analyzed and told us how much it will cost us. That was additional fund for them because they were smarter than. No, maybe not smarter. It could be an oversight, but they could capture it and was waiting for the right time for them to make money. So we didn't see all that. So when you analyze this contract, you would identify some wrongly wired verbiages, and you know what you're going to do to them. You call the contract team to rewire them in a way that they would be holistic, they would be exhaustive. So we look at all the procurement documentations and also to identify risk. We look at the enterprise environmental factors. What are those things in the city as regards permit and certain other things that may likely stop us? We document them down and we document them down. And the tools we use, expert judgment, data will be gathered, like I said, from this document. We analyze them, that's what we do when we sit and we're analyzing them to look at their possibility of occurring and things that may likely stop the achievement, the realization of those objectives that are speculated in the document. And remember, when you are identifying things, you may follow some laid-down procedures, but most of it could be interpersonal skills, soft skills, how you can identify certain things. I'm going to use an example. For instance, you are hunting, like when we're growing up in the community, this local community, there are some hunters that do hunt with the barrels, with guns, and some could use their dogs to hunt. But these dogs, some of them can hunt better than some other dogs. So the hunting prowess of some dogs were more than others. That is to tell you that these dogs may not write the procedures of hunting down. It's just inbuilt. Maybe they've done it several times. They have mastered some skills, It's just there. They wouldn't want to go and bring, some written down procedures to study every morning before they go out with the hunter. No, it's just in there. They know how to attack. They know, how to distract and certain other things. So when you carry out risk management activity, when you identify risk, there are some soft skills that the books may not be able to speculate, but you have them there in you. And this may be like how you manage the team put together, how you can motivate the team to identify risk management activities and come up with those positive and negative risks that may likely stop the success or add to the success of the project. Yeah. Then we have the risk register. Once the risk register is out, we have our risk report. We have the project document will be updated. Like we said, contracts that are wrongly wired would be rewired. Yeah. So the project management plan has all the subsidiary, the requirement management plan, the schedule management plan, the cost management plan, the resource management plan, the quality management plan, the risk management plan, the scope baseline, the schedule baseline, and the cost baseline. Just to remind you, do not forget, when we talk about baseline, we could be baselining 3 areas: the scope, schedule, and the cost, okay? Just to remind you, right? So let's move on. So what are we analyzing? We would be analyzing the root cause. What is even causing those risks? We would be analyzing the strength of those risks. We'll be looking at even the strength of the performing organization, the strength of those risks, that's their impact. We will be looking at our weakness in capturing those risks or maybe carrying out those activities. How do we have the right expertise? We would be looking at the opportunities and also the threats, and how do we capture them? Yeah, that's where SWOT analysis comes in. So every other areas, yeah, like the PESTLE, I'm going to be replacing the PESTLE with what is called the STIPUL. When we say PESTLE, you now have political, economy. You want to analyze, identify risk by looking at the front list. Okay, is it a political risk? Is it an economical risk? Is it a risk that is from technology? Do we have the right technology? Is it a social risk? Is it a legal risk? Are we meeting up with the permit? Is it an environmental risk? Do we have to, does the project has to do with materials, with liquids, if that are not carefully contained, may spill and cause some kind of degradation? Are there things like that? So these are what you analyze. Yeah. So that is that. The risk register becomes our output. The risk register it contains the outcome of the risk management processes as they are conducted. So the risk register has what? They identify the risk. Okay. So now we want to perform qualitative risk analysis. You want to analyze those risks identified and placed on the risk register. Now you want to assess and combine their probability of occurrence and impact. When we say probability of occurrence, we are saying the likelihood of occurrence. And this may be on a scale, maybe a scale of 1 to 5, a scale of 1 to 10. You will just look at it and say, okay, yeah, I think the possibility of this risk happening is 1. The possibility of this risk happening among a scale of 1 to 5 is 5. That is a greater certainty. And if it may occur, what will be the impact? You multiply probability times impact. That is risk management. You know the weight of the risk. So you want to prioritize the identified risk using their relative probability or likelihood of occurrence. You know, when you can't look at their possibility of occurring and you multiply by their impact, you will now see that some risk may have certain weights than some risk. So that is the prioritized risk. I'm sorry, prioritized list. All the risks are prioritized according to their possibility of occurring and their impact. You see the rankings. So the risk register is found in the project management plan. We take it out and we start analyzing. Then at the end of the day, now that we have new knowledges of what the risk may take or bring if they would occur and their possibility of occurring, as talking about probability, we now go back to update the document with this new knowledge. So in this area, we cannot categorize the risk. Like I told us about the categories. Categories may be according to phases. Categories may be according to functions, that is specialty. Different kinds. Yeah. There could be financial risk. You may be looking at the roles and the responsibilities. You may be looking at if you have the right personnel enlisted, do they have the expertise to carry out the project, to capture those activities? If no, you know that they may jeopardize. They may waste time, and time is money and something more than money. So you would be talking about avoiding that by training them. You may want to look at the scheduled activities and so on and so forth. Yeah. So when we analyze, we still would be looking at, talking about quality, you still want to look at the urgencies of occurring. You want to look at the proximity and near are we to it. You want to see the manageability. Can we manage the risk? There are some risks you cannot manage. It's either you cut them off the project scope or you accept them. And some risks are controllable. Some are not controllable. Some risks are detectable. Some are not detectable. When they would happen, they just happen and you know that they have happened. So when you identify them, you still would be required to analyze and keep them in the pockets or the buckets where they should be. So it's all about facilitation as a project manager. Remember when the risks are what? I analyze as regards their possibility of occurring, their likelihood of occurring, as against their impact, they would be placed in an hierarchical list. And if you want to organize this hierarchical list based on the functions, the departments, the area of the project, the phases, you may have a risk breakdown structure, ROBS, where when you pick an area of your project, you now can see that this particular risk is happening within this area. And this is happening within this area. So as you keep cascading the work breakdown structure down, in each activity, in each work package, you would now be seeing the identified risk found in there. Okay, now let's take a look at this probability and impact matrix. When we talk about risk can be prioritized for further quantitative analysis and response based on the risk rating, we can be looking at 3 different kinds of risk rating rules. Okay, which is we'll look at their threats and also their opportunities and the probability. Yeah. So now let's see, looking at this chart, I think this chart can do us better. Probability and impact matrix. Take a look at this column. The left-hand column is giving us a scale from 0.1 to 0.9. 0.9 is close to 1. That shows that anything that falls within 0.9 means that it's close to 1, which means it has a higher certainty of occurring. Further down to 0.1, which means it has a lower certainty of occurring. That's what this probability is saying. When we have 0.5, it's 50-50. It may or it may not. The possibility of occurring and the possibility of not happening is same. That's why it's 0.5. But now we go into want to look at the chart. You see that the chart is also further broken into two. The left-hand side is threats. The right-hand side is opportunities. That is to say that the threat area are impact that may likely take money out of our pocket, may likely take resources out of our pocket. They may jeopardize our equipment. They may jeopardize our time. They may jeopardize our finances. Why? Opportunities may save our time, may save us money, may save us certain other things. So you look at it from 0.005. You see, when the threat is 0.005, that shows that is higher than a threat that is 0.001. 0.01 rather. 0.05 is higher than 0.01. As we keep moving away to the right-hand side of the threat area, you see that the threat is increasing. So any risk, when you combine their impact over their likelihood of occurring, that's their probability, you place them in this chart, you would now see the ones you should take more serious. You look at this gray area, you see that risk that falls within this should be more taken serious than others. Look at this also. So that's what now you come down, you will now see that 0.005 is low, 0.01 is high, is low, very low is 0.05, 0.10 is low, 0.2, it's a moderate risk. And as it's getting it close to the middle line, is increasing, say high and very high. You need time to understand this more. If you can't get it in this class, I think you have to give it the time. So you have analyzed. So each risk is rated on its probability of occurrence and impact on the objective of it, of the objective if it does occur. So the organization would have to determine which combination of probability and impact results in classification of high risk. We will decide which one should be moderate and low and low, low, low. So we come up with this matrix. You may pick your own colors, but most times we use different shades of gray. So when we identify these risks, there are some low risks that when you look at them, they are like nothing, but we still have to place them in a list called the watch list. You're looking at them. You're not taking them serious now, but you're still looking at them because cares are not taken. They may likely result to something important. Yeah. So risk data quality assessment. This is a technique that enables us to evaluate the degree to which the data about the risk are useful for risk management. Now we have gotten some knowledge about the risk. Are they useful? Can they aid us in carrying out risk assessment? So the data we've gotten, can it really give us some speculation about the nature of that risk and how they would occur? Do we have knowledge of it? Can they enable us to rely? Can we rely on them? It's about the risk data quality assessment. Some persons, some workforces can give you some data about how to assess and manage those risks, but certain times they may not even help you. So that's why we need to understand the quality of those data. So risk categorization can be, like I said, foundational, can be functional, it can be internal, also external, it may be technical. You just categorize them. When it's external, now you're dealing with the government, maybe it's a market, or maybe the environmental challenge. We've talked about risk urgencies. We must assess all those risks and look at their urgencies. What is the urgency of the risk? Is it happening like now? Is it going to take place in the near term? Is it that we have to now start running to put together a response strategy, or else it may likely occur? So we want to know, how close are we to it? Yeah, now we have the risk, we have the list of the prioritized risk, which is our output. We went in to update our risk register. We went in to update our assumptions. Now we have analyzed, so our assumptions are better now. The project documents are updated. So perform quantitative risk analysis, like I said. We want to look at the identified risk, the qualitatively analyzed risk. We want to look at them in another way. We want to look at their level, their importance as regards the project objectives. So we want to numerically analyze them against the project objectives. So this is performed on risks that are already been prioritized from the output of the qualitative risk analysis. So we analyze and give numerical ratings to those individual risks. Yeah, that's what we do here. So no other new terminology, no new term, all the same materials we're going to be analyzing. But now we are looking at the risk objectives and say, okay, how this particular risk may shake our project and it may cost us 2%, 3%, 4% of our project. Or maybe it may deny us from realizing the objective. Yeah, any other project document, I wouldn't want to be reading them out to you, but you should know that a project document must be updated once these knowledges have been gotten. And do not forget, what are you updating? You may be the basis of assumption, the basis of estimate that was not right. Now you cannot see that it's right because you have further carried out analysis. Yeah. The tools has to do with different kind of techniques. We may use sensitivity analysis. It helps us determine which risk has the most potential impact on the project. Which risk, so you remember that all these are tools. For those who are thinking of writing the project management professional exams, I think you have a question here. So one typical display of the sensitivity analysis is the tornado diagram. I remember about 13 years ago, I know I made this question in the hall. Yeah, wow. Thank God I know it. Which is used for comparing relative importance and impact of variables that have a higher degree of uncertainty to those that are more stable. But this sounds like a spiritual talk, right? But all you need to know that there is a tool that we will use in analyzing the numerical value of the risk that is called the sensitivity analysis. You can manually do that. You can also look at risk and speculate. But when we have this risk identified and placed in some softwares, they can look at it and juggle and come up with some knowledge about them. Then we have the expected monetary value analysis. Remember, we are looking at how much would the risk worth as against the project objective. When we say monetary value analysis, expected monetary value. So this is a statistical analysis and that we use in calculating the average outcome when the future includes scenarios that may or may not happen, or to be the average outcome when something that may happen in the future, something that we may encounter in the future may happen or may not happen. The EMV of opportunities will generally be expressed as what positive values, while those of threats will be negative. So most of these you would come back to read when you are on the project. And some of these machines can get them done for you. But it's also good you have understanding of the nativity of what they are all about. So that's why I would say you analyze and calculate the average outcome when the future includes scenarios that may or may not happen. Looking at it financially. So how is it done? You are multiplying the value of each possible outcome by its probability of occurrence and adding the products together. You see? The individual risk, you're looking at their possibility of occurring in the future that they are, and you're adding them together. We may model, we may simulate the risk. Now we want to look at the uncertainties of the project, simulating their potential impact so we can have a kind of visibility of how they may impact on the project objectives. Yeah. I'm not going to be taking questions today. And every question should be dropped in the chat. And then I'll come back to answer them one after the other. So when you want to present uncertainties, what do we mean? You have identified things. You're looking at the individual project risk. You look at the input into the quantitative risk analysis, looking at the model that will enable you reflect these uncertainties. There are lots of areas we can see in these machines. It can show us the normal representative, but all these are machines. These are not the nativity understanding without showing you those softwares. And you may or may not even be the project risk personnel, but it's also good to know that these are what you would be seeing. The triangular, the normal, the long normal, the beta. After we talked about the beta, when we were talking about the project evaluation and review techniques, where which we did the optimism, the pessimism, and the most likely multiply by 4, and we divided everything by 6. That is a better representation. Yeah. Okay. No other thing to talk about here that we don't know. And it is also good to know that when you start taking this class, we are building on the previous knowledge. So we have those risks identified. Those risks as against the project objectives, we have identified them. So what do? We have to now come up with the plan risk responses. We want to develop options and actions that will enable us to enhance the opportunities and what reduce the threats as against the project objective. And to come up with how we would stop them. So what do? We go back, look at the documents where they were gotten, where they were identified, and things that they have been done about them. We bring them out. And then we start gathering those knowledges. We come up with strategies to capture the threats, come up with strategies for opportunities. We come up with strategies rather to keep the threats away from the project and to capture the opportunities. We would also analyze and come up with contingent response strategies. How much is enough to keep on the ground to either mitigate, accept those risks. We'll also come up with strategies for the overall project risk. Then we analyze the data and we make decisions. This is what we're going to do. We have to do it now or not now. This is how we're going to get it done. This is who, and this is what who should do at this time. Then, now that we have new knowledges and things we will do, if things are not well identified that are found in the project management plan or in any of our subsidiary plans, we raise a change request. That is where we have change request already as our output. And with these new knowledges, we update the project management plan and all the project documents will be updated. Yeah. I talked about CATM. I'm going to take you there. Just don't worry. The most important aspect of this that we are new to. Now, let's take a look at it. When we talk about strategies for negative risk or threats, there are things we must deal with. We must ensure that we do what? We keep the risk minimal or totally away from the project. And there are 4 things, 4 strategy we have. The first one is either we are avoiding the risk, we are transferring the risk, we are mitigating the risk, or we are accepting it. For negative risk, when we say avoid, we want to change the project management plan to eliminate the threats entirely. We don't want to do that aspect of the job. That is avoidance. You want to isolate the project objective from the risk, impact, or change the objective that is in jeopardy. That is avoidance. There are certain things that you just have to avoid by cutting them off. Okay, we want to construct this, we want to build this, we want to do this, but when we get it done, in course of doing it, we will not do this. Why should we not do it? Because it will do this to us, it will stop us, it will delay us. So let's avoid this aspect, remove it. It could be a building. As it's been designed in the scope, it's been stated that we would have gold on every door. As the handle of the doors, gold must be installed there. But now sourcing for that kind of gold, molding it may impact on the schedule, the time of completion. So the project manager and the team may say, okay, now let's look at the scope. Let's redesign. Instead of gold, let it be steel. That is avoidance. Because the knowing that sourcing for gold may mean more time. Then transfer. The risk transfer requires shifting some or all of the negative impact of the threat along with ownership of the response to a third party. You're transferring to a third party, somebody who have a better expertise in capturing it, in ensuring that that thing never impact or delay or take money out of your pocket. You're contracting that aspect of your project to a third party. Why mitigating is different. It implies a reduction in the probability, a reduction in the impact of that adverse risk event. You're not totally removing it. You've actually accepted it, but you want to keep it in the acceptable threshold. You want to come up with, less complex processes, just like conducting several tests, ensuring that we get the right thing done, or choosing a more stable supplier that can do that. Yeah. Then accept. We accept negative risk too, in as much as we avoid them, there are some risks that you can accept. So this strategy adopts a method of eliminating. Okay, let me take that again. Okay, you have identified these risks and you try to eliminate them, they cannot be eliminated. You want to mitigate them, you cannot mitigate them. You want to transfer them, there's nobody to be transferred to. And certain times, these are maybe areas in our core business. We don't want to give it to a third party. Because if they get in, they may not understand our trade secret. So we may want to accept that aspect of it and use our personnel to do it. So this strategy indicates that the project team has decided not to change the project management plan, but to deal with it. Or maybe we are not able to identify somebody that can get it done. I'll be late comer in my class today, but I'm not going to be talking about that. Yeah. You just, when someone quietly just sneak into the class and sits down and so you feel like, I've been here for more than 3 hours. All right, so that is about that. So I said I have a strategy that I call CATM. Now take a look at this. You see that the very first thing is avoid. Transfer M. Oh, that's ATM. Okay. So ATM for negative risk. Okay. And now you may not say A square. That is avoid, accept. So whenever you want to carry out, come up with response strategies for negative risk, you remember ATM and remember your A squared. It doesn't matter what kind of risk it is. I need you to know that the ones that you think may jeopardize, that are so mighty, that can affect the scope of the project, the objective of the project, what do? You totally avoid them. You change it, you will not do that again. And sometimes the best avoiding is not to even carry out that project. There's some project, if you say you don't want to lose money, you may not do that project. You just cut it off. That is a complete holistic and ultimate avoidance. So that's the ATM, all right? Now, when we move on to the positive risk response strategy, we have what I call the C. Yeah. I think something jumped out of it. Let me see. Let me see if it's in the future. No, I think somebody edited my slide when I was away. I'm suspecting the young man that got into this class indeed. Okay, but all right, let's just leave it. All right, let's talk about it. Now you see that we have S, E, and A. That is to say that positive risk, if they are positive, there are opportunities which you have analyzed, identified. They can be accepted. They can be accepted. Which dog was that? Sneaking into my class. All right. Okay. So that's that. So the first one to consider is to exploit. So this strategy may be selected for risk with positive impacts, where the organization wishes to ensure that the opportunity is realized. We want to ensure that the opportunity is realized, so we further want to exploit it. Now, when we say exploit, we want to eliminate uncertainty associated with that particular upside risk. We want to ensure that the opportunity definitely happens. Yeah. As it. Remember, in the negative aspect, there's a particular risk that we do not have the expertise to capture. We gave it out and we said, oh, that was transfer. But this time around, since it's a positive risk, we don't want to transfer it. We still want somebody to come in, but we still want to have our hands inside there. That is the sharing. Sharing a positive risk involves allocating some or all of the ownership of the opportunity to a third party who is best able to capture the opportunity for the benefit of the project. And then we have acceptance. We are accepting the opportunity. We are willing to take the advantage if it comes along, but not actively pursuing it. Then what is contingent response strategies? So some responses are designed for use only if certain events occur. That is contingency reserve. For some risk, it is appropriate for the project team to make a response plan. Yeah, we'll come up with a response plan. And this response plan can only be executed under certain conditions. And this must be when we have sufficient warning to implement the plan. So when we say sufficient warning, we are talking about other events that may trigger that contingency responses. Okay, data gathering, interpersonal and team skill. These are not new to EFE. Don't want to call his name, and so everybody would not know that EFE was the one that got into this class late today when we are almost closing. Yeah, so data analysis under this area means that a number of alternative risk response strategies may be considered. We're looking at alternative analysis. We're looking at cost-benefit analysis. How much would it cost us for us to mitigate this risk? And should we even try to mitigate it? Because if you're not careful, you now want to use $1 million to chase $500,000. So we want to know if we should implement it, if we should put mitigative strategy, what we will get in return will not be less than what we would put on ground. Yeah. So implementing the risk responses. We came up with a strategy there. Now we want to implement it. We have to implement it. Here now we want to ensure that the agreed upon risk responses are executed as planned. We're following through as planned. We want to ensure that what we're doing is what we said we should do. We would do rather. So the same routine, those plans, the CATM which we had, is what we are implementing here. In a place where what we will do is not holistic, we raise a change request. And then we monitor the implemented risk. What is monitoring? What is monitoring? Monitoring is not only like implementing the plan, it's also implementing the plan and ensuring that the implemented strategy is giving you the desired result. And if it's not giving you the desired result, you are coming up with a change request to see how you can change that strategy, and also ensuring that you keep things in the way they should go. That is the monitoring and controlling. It's a monitoring risk. It's the process of implementing risk response plan, tracking, identifying risk, monitoring residual risk, and identifying new risk. Like I said, monitor your residual risk. It may be small in time, but if care is not taken, they may grow to be giant. And at that time, if you're not careful, once a puppy will grow up to be the Rottweiler terrorizing the street. The Rottweiler terrorizing the street. Yeah. Yeah. You see, my screen is still showing the way it should show. Yeah. So that. That's about the monitoring of the residual risk. Like I said, the new risk award, those are the secondary risk. And therefore evaluate, you must evaluate them and ensure that your processes are effective. So taking a look at the chart here, you see our input, the project management plan, the risk register, the work performance data. These are things we want to analyze. These are things we want to analyze to tell rather if what we say should happen is what is happening and is giving us the speculated result, right? We have the work performance report, and the work performance report gets in to be used by the tools and the techniques. And on the output, we have the work performance information. A report was raised by the foreman and members of his team to the project manager. The project manager sits with his team to analyze that back and forth and comes up with a work performance information that will speculate the health of the project or the health of the risk response strategy. So what do? We carry out risk assessment. We carry out risk audit. We do variance analysis. We analyze the trend, the way things are going. Are things going incrementally in a way that we will get the desired result? Or are things going in an unorganized way? I remember when we're talking about quality, we talked about our flow chart. We talked about our control diagram that had taught us about the rule of 7. So if you're analyzing trends, if the trend is not trending like with good precision or with a kind of accuracy, you know that you're not even in control, certain other things. So you may want to sit down and capture the cause. What is making it to, even if you're getting figures within the acceptable limits, is it in the predictable pattern? So reserve analysis. What do we have left? What do we have left? Can it enable us mitigate the risk, transfer the risk, avoid the risk, keep the risk away till the end of the project? Yeah. So these are terms we talked about risk assessment. Say monitor the risk often results in what? Identification of new risk. reassessment, that's risk reassessment, risk audit. You want to examine and document the effectiveness of the risk response in detailing, that's auditing. Looking at their root causes, talking about the variance and the trends analysis. The variance, always remember that you have your plan and your actual, the difference between them is the variance. All right. We have gotten to this man now, project procurement management. So at this junction, I think we're going to be calling it a day. Yeah. So I hope we can, this is another large knowledge area. I hope we can finish up with it tomorrow. After this, we still have another chapter. But looking at how far we have gone today, are we 50% of what we could have done today or tomorrow? If we can finish today, and tomorrow rather, we will immediately look at the 7th edition. This is the 6th edition. We'll look at the 7th edition. We'll use one day to round up the 6th edition, the 7th edition. And then by Sunday next week, we would be talking about the Primavera. How somebody had been waiting for it since. Somebody had been waiting for it since. How maybe as he came into class today, it could have been like, it's today for Primavera. Yeah. But like I said, calm down. Cool your temper. Yeah. Okay. So once again, thank you very much for your time. And before we start interacting, let me kindly stop the record.